with hoof falls and footfalls, and today we're going to be talking about decreasing equine burnout and how we can do that by identifying and addressing common root causes of that equine burnout. So this is going live right now. I'm going to go ahead and let a couple people jump on live that we're planning on attending, and then we'll roll right into this talk. So this live talk, we're going to be talking about what is equine burnout. So when we say our equines are burning out, what are we looking for or what are we seeing? We're going to identify some common root causes of that equine burnout, and sometimes that is reassuring to know that it's not just at your center or your program, but that it's stuff that we experience kind of across the board in the industry. And then once we identify those common causes, we'll talk about where those common causes kind of come from or what they might be rooted in, and hopefully some action steps that you can take to either prevent it from happening or maybe even reverse some of those equine burnout behaviors from happening. So I got asked a while ago to do a couple chats on top things I see go wrong in the adaptive or therapeutic riding world. And this is, I guess, one of them. I hate saying, things that go wrong. I guess you could say that this is a common struggle I see with centers and instructors, is that we have high burnout in our program horses or our lesson horses. So that is something that I want to talk about, and I am a huge advocate of ethically and safely partnering with our equine coworkers, because they're the backbone of what we do in adaptive or therapeutic riding, which is kind of my wheelhouse and my specialty, but also any other equine assisted service, whether it's therapy based like equine facilitated mental health or PTOT speech therapy incorporating equines, all the way over to the more recreational side or horsemanship side like adaptive horsemanship, adaptive riding, therapeutic driving, interactive vaulting, any of those. So the information that we're going to be talking about in this chat about decreasing equine burnout and identifying the most common root causes that I've seen a lot and other instructors have seen, and how we can address those and prevent or reverse those. They're something that apply across the industry in the equine assisted services industry. And really quickly, before we get into this topic, please make sure that you check out my website, Hoof Falls and Footfalls. I specialize in online and in-person education for instructors in the adaptive or therapeutic riding world. I also do industry consulting, so if you're looking to build your program or you're looking to take your instructing to the next level, I do one-to-one intensive instructor coaching and development, which, oh, by the way, counts for continuing education hours, but also really specifically benefits you and gets your teaching set apart from others around you and helps you find your style and really refines how you teach. And we use scientific founded theory behind what we put into not just what we're teaching, but how we teach what we're teaching. So check out Hoof Falls and Footfalls, like and follow me on YouTube, and like and follow my Facebook channel as well, or podcast, so you get notifications when I go live or upload new videos, and that's how you can see that. For those of you joining on live, if you can drop a comment really quick, let me know where you're watching from, and let me know what your top burnout symptom is when you see one of your equine coworkers getting burnt out in classes or in programs. And for you, what do you think your top one or two causes of that burnout are? And what have you done to fix that burnout? Or are you still trying to find a solution for it? So drop a comment if you're joining in live, even on a replay. You are welcome to, and that's much appreciated. And this is a good time for you guys to chat and discuss as well. All right, so equine burnout. So when we are talking about equine burnout, what are we even looking for? So equine burnout a lot of times looks like our horses having naughty or bad behaviors. I have a couple blog posts on this and a couple other YouTube videos of naughty behaviors and where those come from and all of that. This is kind of a different look at it of common things that we see go wrong at programs, and that common struggle points I see from instructors, not just naughty behaviors, but equine burnout in general. So when we see equine burnout, we could see pinning of ears. We could see that horse become less responsive to their environment, whether that's their humans or their herd mates, or even just environmental factors around them. They kind of become closed off and can't think of the word, stoic. There we go. Had a brain. My brain left me there for a minute. So we could see them kind of become closed off. We could see them get nippy. We could start seeing them just refuse to move forward. So not wanting to go from a halt to a walk, from a halt to a trot. Maybe they're pushing through trotting and their head goes up and it's a panic trot. Head flies up when we whoa. It could be them getting antsy or not wanting to load into the mounting area, or biting while we're in the mounting area, biting while we're girthing, getting girthy. When you go get the horse, whether they're in pasture or in their stall, instead of wanting to come engage with you and saying, hello person, I'm ready to go work, they hightail it to the corner of their stall or the other end of the pasture. So there's lots of different burnout signs. I would definitely say the top ones I see are nippiness, and kind of goes hand in hand girthiness, and then also just an overall reluctance to go. So kind of that sticky horse and like, why isn't my horse going? So burnout is a big problem, because burnout, when our horses reach that point where their behaviors are impacting people around them, that can impact the safety of our volunteers on the ground. Because if someone is getting bit or threatened to be bit at, or the horse is just looking crabby, or they're pushy and they're racing through the trot, or they're not wanting to move on, that can make it a not very fun environment for our volunteers to be in. It can make our students, or even the parents or the caregivers, not confident in our program or confident in our horses that we're utilizing, because they're seeing those bad behaviors. It can unsettle instructors. It can be frustrating to teach a student on a burnout horse. It can be a little scary sometimes if you're a newer instructor and you're seeing this horse have these bad behaviors or signs of burnout, and you're not sure what to do or how you can fix it. But there's some red flags happening of how this horse is behaving. So the burnout has a huge impact on our volunteers and our students and our program. And burnout behaviors, the biting, just overall crabbiness, maybe they're starting to not listen under saddle, reluctance of going, they're acting out at other horses, whatever it might be. That could even raise to a level of concern where we might have to think about retiring that horse out of the program and not utilizing them in that program anymore. And then that means we have to find another horse. And finding horses, or equines, mules and donkeys, for Equine Assisted Services, as you guys know, it takes a unique type of horse to fit in what we do. So replacing a horse is difficult. It can be a huge drain on your budget if you're going out and you're purchasing or partially purchasing one. Or resources might be limited if we have, especially in a market right now where horses are going for quite a bit. It can be hard to find a horse that fits the needs of our program, that's mentally and physically sound, and can tolerate volunteers and the sidewalkers around them, and that has the training that is of the level that we need to make them a safe partner for the students that we're teaching. So what we need in a program horse is something special. So if we can hang on to those horses and keep them mentally happy and physically happy and sound as long as possible, that is financially the best option. Looks good to the optics of those watching our programs, potential donors of horses, potential donors financially, potential staff and instructors wanting to come in and teach at your program, potential students, potential volunteers. So the look and the behavior of our horses does speak a lot about our programs. And this is a factor that I will say can be a very hard piece to manage, because it's not just you and that horse. If it was your own personal horse, and working through their behaviors, and you guys come up with this working relationship and it's just you and the horse, or okay, well, maybe you decide to do private traditional lessons, well, it's just you and the horse and a couple students. Now, in most of these equine assisted services programs, we've got several staff members, several instructors. You could have a separate staff team schooling the horses. You could have tons of different horse leaders during the week handling these horses. So now the management piece of trying to pin down what is causing these equine burnout behaviors expands. It's not just the owner, or it's not just the owner or the trainer and the couple students. It's now the owner and the 50 volunteers that handle it, and the sidewalkers and the students and the parents and the visitors and the donors. There's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of factors and influences that can be causing these burnout behaviors and the actual burnout of our equines in our programs. So, common causes. Most of these are going to be kind of in no particular order except for the first one. I would say the first one, and it's tied together with the second one, is the common cause for burnout and crabbiness and biting and nipping is overgirthing. It is my soapbox topic. If you guys have ever worked with me, either doing mentoring or one-to-one coaching, or I've come and done a clinic, you know that one of my soapbox topics is overgirthing, because again, I want to recognize that I know it comes from a good place from instructors and from volunteers if they're responsible for girthing, is that, well, we want to make sure that that tack and that equipment doesn't go anywhere. We don't want that saddle to turn and to dump our rider. But undergirthing and causing a loose saddle to slide causes problems, but overgirthing can cause problems too. Overgirthing, I mean, imagine wearing a belt. Like if you have a belt on right now and it's comfortably tight and snug to hold your pants up appropriately, take that belt now and tighten it 2 holes while we're sitting here and talking. And then I'm going to, ask you to go do push-ups or go run a lap around your house. That little bit of discomfort and over-tightening can create a negative environment for that horse. There are a lot of nerves, and these horses can feel a fly on their skin and shake it off. So they feel all of this tack and equipment on them, and all the nerves that are getting pressed and over tightened. If we're over tightening these girths, is not a good thing for these horses. They come to anticipate that discomfort or even that pain of the tack and the equipment getting put on them, and then them trying to communicate, hey, this is too tight, this isn't feeling well, and being ignored, and then maybe even being tightened again. And then what do we expect from them? Well, of course, they can't tell us. They are telling us in their own way of, hey, something's not right, human. But if we ignore those little whispers of, hey, this isn't right, and I don't really feel like walking on because my girth is too tight, or they're standing awkwardly, then it progresses to them bumping you with their nose, or not wanting to come up to you in their stall, to then biting, to then maybe we have a big blow up of this horse is just done and they have a big act out. So overgirthing is huge, and a lot of that stems from, 1, we want the saddle not to move, but 2, we check the girth in the wrong spot. Make sure you're checking under that sternum, that center line of that horse, because that's where we get the true tightness from. If you check on the sides, it is oftentimes going to feel too loose just because of how that horse is made. So overgirthing is one of the top causes I have found for that horse getting burnt out and displaying bad behaviors. Going right along with that hand in hand is tack fitting. So a lot of times we feel like we have to over tighten that tack or tighten it to a certain level because the tack is moving and sliding or doing whatever, because the tack doesn't fit well. So the tack not fitting well then makes the tack move, which then makes us feel like we have to have the tack tighter to not move, even though the root cause is the tack not fitting correctly. And also then if the tack isn't fitting correctly, 1, we're over tightening, and 2, imagine walking around with a shoe that is too big or too small or moving around. So if your shoe is not fitting right, that's going to impact how you're feeling the rest of the day. Maybe you're getting a sore spot and your gait's going to change. How you walk changes. How you interact with other people. Maybe you're a little snippy because you just want to get home and get that shoe off. Maybe your patience isn't as long, or your attention is on your shoe instead of what you're supposed to be talking about with the person next to you. So, the tack and the equipment and the girthing all goes hand in hand. So, solution to that, Make sure your tack and your equipment fits well. If you're not sure how to do saddle fitting, Schleisel Satterley has some great videos online of how to do Western and English saddle fitting. Get a professional saddle fitter out there, see if you can maybe host a clinic where you can invite local equine people to come and do a saddle fitting clinic, and maybe the host barn, which is you, could have it written off, or you guys don't have a cost incurred if you guys are hosting it. But learn how to do saddle fitting. Make sure you're not over tightening the girth. Make sure you are checking the girth in the correct place, and make sure that your girth is correct to appropriately hold that saddle on. So not using those tiny little thin nylon girths that come with a lot of the bareback pads or the cheapy saddles. Invest in a good girth. Make sure the mechanics of your saddle and your equipment make sense too, to appropriately hold that girth on. And I can tell you, if you've ever had a horse drop to their knees because they have been over tightened, that is something you will never forget. I've had that happen in the mounting ramp, and it is a very scary thing. So don't do that. Don't make that mistake. Overgirthing is huge. And then other items, kind of in no particular order. Something that I see cause a lot of issues is lack of consistent and quality handling of the horses. So anytime I'm working with a horse and I'm teaching a student, or I'm teaching a volunteer or an instructor in training, we focus on equine psychology and just equine training principles, so to speak, and that whatever we do with a horse, any interaction we have, we are either reinforcing good behaviors or we are reinforcing bad behaviors. Bad behaviors being just behaviors that we don't want to see. A lot of times bad behaviors, naughty behaviors, is just them trying to communicate, but we can either be reinforcing good things or reinforcing bad things. And a lot of times the challenge that we run into in our industry is that with so many people interacting with these horses, even if it's just walking through the barn and saying hello to the horse, or getting the horse out to brush them to help with class and they're a new horse person, they can be unintentionally reinforcing bad behaviors. And so there's that lack of consistency and lack of quality in the handling and in the interaction with those horses. They're like sponges. They're like like kids or dogs. They're constantly interacting with their environment, learning cause and effect, seeing what the rules are, and adjusting. So remember and push this on your volunteers too, and this helps to go verify why you're maybe protective of your horses and you don't let just anybody come out and handle them after saying hello to them once in 10-minute training. You should be doing more than that. And it's because you are reinforcing good or bad behaviors with these horses, which then in turn reflects directly in those sessions with students or with clients. Our horses aren't going to discriminate between, oh, I can act this way with the volunteers, but once I get a student on my back, I'm going to be a perfect angel because that's what I'm expected to do because the instructor's out there. We need to have consistent boundaries with our horses across the board. Solution for that, solid volunteer training. Make sure that you are asking people to demonstrate skills, be very clear in what you're expecting, set clear policies and procedures for how you want your horses handled there, and teach good, solid equine handling, equine training, equine psychology, theory, and mentality, because these are our coworkers. These are who we're relying on. Yes, and volunteer retention is important, and people like coming out and working with our horses, but it shouldn't be at the expense of our horses' training or their consistency or their happiness or well-being. Going along with that, reinforcing good or bad behavior and lack of consistent handling and boundaries, I see a lot of people in the horse's bubble all the time. So they're leaning on the horse, they're hugging the horse, they're sitting there playing with the horse's nose. Yes, I'm guilty of all these things with my personal horses, but one person and my horse and knowing our boundaries and our working relationship versus this horse having to consistently have the same interaction with people, 50 different people across the board, is different. And I still don't hug on my horse's head. I don't sit there and play with their mouth or hand feed them, because even for me, if it's just my personal horse versus a lesson horse or a program horse that's handled by volunteers, I still don't want my horse biting me. I still don't want my horse rubbing their head on me. It's not, it might look cute to some people. That's a dangerous behavior. So we're in the horse's bubble a lot, and we're in their space, and a lot of these horses are asking us through ears, through eyes, through shifting of their body away from us to get out of their bubble and honor their space. If we constantly ignore that bubble, constantly enter their space, either one, the horse gets frustrated and doesn't want to interact with you and they're constantly drawing away, or two, that horse is going to go then into your bubble and not respect you. And so then that's when we get the head rubbing and the pushing through boundaries and grabbing at clothing and biting in a playful way. So respect the horse's bubble. If you're wanting them to respect you, respect them. Give them space. Just like people, we should be respecting each other's bubbles and boundaries. So pay attention to the bubble and the space and giving those horses space. And remember how many hands are on these horses during the week. All the horse handlers and all the horse prep and all the students and all the instructors and all the visitors. That's a lot of people too. I don't know about you guys, but like I only have 2 kids, but at the end of the day, even with just 2 kids around me, sometimes it's like, stop touching me, go away. I can't imagine what our horses feel like sometimes with, 20 different people touching and interacting with them throughout the day. So I'm sure they get to the point of, look, I'm done, sensory overload, I don't want people touching me. So we need to respect their space, respect their bubble. Fair, I also see a lot of decrease in fair and clear communication. I have seen time and time again of people standing there playing with the horse's mouth of, oh, because it's so cute, look, he wiggles his lip, and oh, look, he's got a floppy lower chin. And then the horse goes and lips them, and then they're like, oh, shame on you. And then they whack the horse or do whatever behavior. Well, you were just kind of creating that behavior that you didn't want. Or, oh, it's so cute that he's rubbing his eye on me, but then we take the bridle off and they do a huge scrape and they knock the horse leader over or off balance, and oh my gosh, why did he do that? Well, because you've allowed him to do that 5 other times, just in a lesser manner. So fair and clear communication is key, and also the upward transitions and the downward transitions. So many times we are not aware of what we're about to do. So like going from a halt to a walk. A lot of times it's, oh, okay, we're walking and I know I'm doing it, but I don't warn my horse and I just yank him forward on the lead rope instead of, and walk. And my body language is clear and I'm thinking about it and I'm intentional about my movements and my verbal commands. Same thing with going from walk to trot. Are we being intentional and giving that horse a heads up and giving them a chance to respond and obey before we just drag on them? Or do they know, this student or this person isn't even going to pay attention to me and they're just going to automatically drag on me and not give me a chance, so I'm not even going to listen or be tuned into that person. So teaching your volunteers how to do it and walk and trot, ready, and some type of preparatory, hey horse, we're about to do something. Impact of our body language on the horses. Teaching that to our students and our volunteers is key too. Going in with that lack of consistent quality and handling also goes anticipating behaviors. So I've seen several times horses get loaded into a mounting ramp and the horse leader, whoever's heading that horse, grabs onto the horse's halter and braces for a bite or the horse moving forward or whatever they think is going to happen. Could be unconsciously. Maybe they aren't even thinking about it. They might have come from a previous class where the horse they handled before was nipping at them, and so it's just kind of self-preservation instinct. I'm grabbing on so I don't get bit this time, even if it's a different horse. A lot of our behaviors that we're anticipating the horse to do kind of creates those behaviors, right? If we think it can manifest and happen, is sometimes that saying that is out there. Same thing with our horses. If we think or we anticipate our horse is going to do something, probably going to do it because they're responding off of our body language or our nonverbals or our verbal language or our tone of voice or how we're carrying ourselves. So we can also be anticipating and creating a lot of those behaviors or unideal movement in our horses. Another thing, and this falls back more on the instructors, is that horses getting burnout in class and being nippy and grumpy and not wanting to move forward or just going and standing somewhere is not addressing rider position or a bouncy seat at the trot or heavy hands or leaning off to the side or being goofy and bouncing around at the walk and not expecting our riders to be a good partner to our horses, even if they have a physical or a cognitive diagnosis. and again, all of our students have different abilities and they're their own unique individual. However, we are partnering with another living, breathing, sentient animal that we are asking to work alongside us. And it's not like they get to choose, oh yeah, I'm going to go to work today. They're told that they're going to go to work today. So we need to teach our riders to be good partners with that horse. And that means sitting centered in our horse. Even if that means, as instructors, I've got to check my rider position 20 times during the lesson and make little adjustments. Well, that's for the well-being of the horse. That horse might communicate, hey, this person's off balance. And then if it's ignored, then they may not want to move on because it's uncomfortable. Their back might get sore. Then they start anticipating pain and discomfort in lessons. Then they don't want to get out anymore. Then they don't want to get load into the mounting ramp because they know when the person sits on them, their back's going to hurt. So paying attention to rider position, rider behavior, rider movement, and expect it out of your riders. Our riders can do so much. A lot of times we underestimate and we put limitations on them as instructors of, oh, he'll never be able to understand a quiet seat or not bouncing or do this or that or whatever. You're putting that limitation a lot of times on that student. So expect a lot from your students and you would be amazed at what your students will give you and that working relationship that your student and the horse can get together. It's pretty cool. So don't be afraid to expect a lot, lovingly and caringly and with grace from our riders, but it's also for the well-being of our horses. Overstimulation and feeling trapped. So we kind of talked about the overstimulation piece of how many hands on the horses during the day or during the week. You know, as an instructor, we might show up to class and all we see is our 10 students that night and our handful of volunteers, and the horse that's working in our class, he might be in one of our classes or maybe two. So we have this little snapshot of what that horse is experiencing during that week. We have to take a big step back and look at the big picture. How many people are handling this horse during the week? How many students are on them? What's the variety of students? What is this horse being asked to do? Is it always walking? Is it always taking a really involved rider? Do they always have a full team? Is it more advanced students? What is this horse doing? Remember that your interaction with that horse might just be a teeny little sliver of their time that day or that week or that month. And so realize that overstimulation is not necessarily just from that moment. It might manifest in that moment, but it could be an accumulation of that day or that week and just too many people around them overtouching. Another thing to think about too is that horses can feel sometimes trapped. Again, they're, and if Jenny's on here, I think Jenny was the one who brought this point up, Jenny Hartung, was that when we're loading our horse into the ramp, the mounting ramp, mounting area, wherever it is, and when we're asking them to go work in class with a full team of sidewalkers, we're asking this prey-minded animal to be surrounded by predators. Now in class it's not as bad because the predators are on the ground walking next to them, but they do have one on their back. But when we're loading into that mounting ramp area, we are asking them to hold still while these predators raise up and get at back level, and one of them goes and gets on them while all these other ones are surrounding them and kind of trapping their exit because that person is, blocking with their body language that horse exiting out. But that was a unique way of thinking about it a few years ago that I had not thought about it that way. We're asking this prey animal to suck it up and be surrounded by all these predators, even though, yes, they've built a working relationship with humans, they're domesticated, all of that, but still that ingrained nature that's within them, we're asking a lot of these horses. So pay attention to these horses where they might be feeling trapped because of all the people around them. The unintentional touch of the sidewalkers on the horses, leaning on them or pulling on a pad to try to not get left behind the motion. All of those little touches of the sidewalkers and the horse leaders and the students, the horse feels it. Even though they may not be able to verbalize it, they're still feeling it, they're still being a part of that. Lack of continued schooling is a big one too. So we ask our horses to go out and to be caretakers a lot of the time, to take care of the students, to honestly take care of the volunteers a lot of the time too, because sometimes our volunteers are newer at handling. the horses, and we're asking our horse to kind of be the experienced one of the two, even though our volunteers really should have good, solid training. That's a whole nother thing. But we're asking our horse to be the caretaker. We're asking them to go constantly walk around the arena in a circle, or do walks a million times in a week, or whatever it might be. And we think, oh, well, just because this horse is using an adaptive riding program and they're only walking, or maybe we're doing a little bit of trot, it's okay. They don't need much. So lack of continued schooling, both in ground and under saddle, is huge. Those horses need their time to be taken care of, to not always be the caretaker, but to have a more experienced person go out there and school them, go give them a good exercise, help them keep their core and their top line built up, make them mentally think about stuff that's more challenging than walking around in the circle or walking through a little trail pattern where we're doing walks and halts. Make them think, get them mentally engaged, get them physically engaged. One that helps keep them tuned up for your volunteers and for your students to be able to do more and progress, but it also helps that horse not get burnout due to just monotony and boredom. So they're smart animals, and some horses do better with the monotony than others. Some of them get bored to tears and it's not enough for them, and then they get crabby, and then they don't want to go work, and then they're resistant. So you can have a continuum too of horses of, maybe this horse during session requires less schooling and less rides and less lunging time and less them time than these other two horses in the herd, where we've really got to be doing, maybe we're doing some over fences stuff, or maybe we go take them out on trail or work cattle, or do some, intensive horsemanship stuff on the ground to really challenge them. Maybe we're teaching them tricks, whatever it is. Mentally and physically engage and school those horses, and make sure what you're doing though is consistent and relates over and crosses over into what you're asking the horse to do with the students and with the volunteers. So if whoa means whoa in class, when you're out there schooling and training that horse, even if it's out on the trail or you're going off property, you're doing a clinic with it, whoa means whoa there. Because again, everything relates and flows over to our students, to our volunteers, to then our horse also doing them time. Environmental feed herd, that's another one. So is the horse in an environment where they're happy? Are they getting out? Do they have just downtime where they get to be a horse? Do they have herd interaction? Are they the low man on the totem pole and they're constantly getting picked on throughout the day, and then they're just done and they're tired of being picked on, and so by the time we bring them in and ask them to work in a class, they're crabby, they're hurting, they have bite marks all over them, and their behavior is a result of stuff that's going on due to herd dynamics? Are they hungry? Are we feeding them on a schedule that is convenient for us, but not convenient for the horse, and how horses are biologically created to intake food and process food and metabolize all of that stuff? So are we trying to make a horse fit onto our human schedule, and then they're not feeling great and they have ulcers in their tummy and they're hungry, or whatever it might be? Are they getting enough variety in their environment, or are they bored? Are they only seeing their stall in the arena and that's it? Or are they getting to go out on trail? Are you changing up stuff in the arena so it's a different environment? Are you giving them enrichment stuff? Think about being trapped in your room all day and then going into work and then coming back home. Yes, I know that's a lot of what we've been doing lately, but think about how that mentally and physically took a toll on you. That's what we're asking our horses to do. So do they get to go be in their stall for a bit? Then do they get to go be in turnout for a bit? And then do we ask them to come in and work and give them, or give us their time? Quality of feed too. I don't know about any of you guys, but I know when I don't eat something right. I've got some food sensitivities. I've also been low on vitamins and minerals before due to food sensitivities and stuff, but I don't feel well when I don't have food that meets my nutritional needs, or that doesn't sit well with me due to just my unique makeup. Same thing with horses. They may not be able to communicate it in the same way, but they can feel achy, they can feel lethargic, they can feel under the weather due to poor quality feed or not enough feed, or maybe there's something in your area where you're lacking a certain nutrient in the ground, and so it's not in the feed that the forage that you're feeding your horses. So think about that too. And if you've maybe taken a look at all these other maybe root causes of overgirthing, lack of consistent handling, not addressing rider position, overstimulation, all of that, and it's still not weeding out these things, maybe get a blood panel done and call out a nutritionist and have them do an eval on the food. Maybe there's a hole in the nutrition somewhere and they're internally just don't feel great, and then it out externally is manifesting through behaviors of being crabby and pinning ears or lethargic or biting or nipping. So we've talked about a lot of common causes. Let me know if you guys are on live if there's another common cause I might have missed. I put a prompt up in the event for this group, and I think I've hit most of them. But you know, there's a lot of stuff. I would definitely say though that the overgirthing and the lack of consistent quality handling are probably top two. Overgirthing and improper fitting tack. And then going into riding specific, not addressing rider position and expecting more out of our students and instructors, constantly being mindful of how our riders are sitting and the impact of their natural aids on the horse. I would say those are probably the top things I see frequently cause naughty behaviors. And the other ones are things that we should be on the lookout for. And something to think about too is if we've tried to rule out all of these root causes of the naughty behaviors, sometimes a horse is just not a good fit for what we're asking them to do. And maybe it's not that across the board they're a bad fit for equine assisted services. Maybe they're just not a good fit for your specific program and how you function. I've had some horses in that were on trial that were absolutely phenomenal with independent riders and with just people leading them on the ground. But when you layered in horse leaders and sidewalkers, that was a no-go. They were crabby, they were confused, we did all the training possible, but it just was not a good fit for them. Some horses too just don't do well with multiple people and that many changes in their environment and that many people handling them, and they need their one or two people and that's it, and then that makes them a happy horse. And that's something that you may not be able to train out of them. It just might be their personality type and how they're mentally made up. And that's okay. We've got to be willing to recognize it, even though it might be a super nice horse with all the buttons that we want. Are they happy in our program? Are they happy in how our program is formatted? Or are they maybe great for adaptive riding, but we need to find an instructor that maybe does private lessons and doesn't utilize volunteers? So sometimes what we're asking a horse to do is just not a good fit. It's like being at a job that you hate. Yeah, you could do it, but you're probably going to mumble and groan and complain the entire time, and you're not going to be happy, and your physical well-being is going to go downhill, and your mental well-being is going to go downhill. We can at least grumble and, verbally have an outlet for if we're at a bad job that we don't like to do or choose to quit the job and go somewhere else. Our horses don't have that luxury, so we've got to advocate for them. So really pay attention to your volunteer training, your instructor training. Have your policies and your procedures horse-centered. So is it founded in horse psychology? Is it founded in horse behavior? Make sure you're doing things consistently, and consistently doesn't mean that we always pick hooves starting on the left front going counterclockwise. Consistency is, what are our boundaries? How do we behave? If I ask for a foot, you pick up the foot. It's not necessarily the sequence. Consistency is boundaries, and consistency overall, not necessarily the same exact repetition. Our horses can definitely be flexible in what we ask them to do, but consistency in how we expect them to interact, how we expect them to behave around people, behave in certain situations, should remain the same, whether it's an instructor, a volunteer, or a student. And what we do to our horse, whether it's girthing, respecting their personal space, playing with their mouths, hand feeding them, whatever it is, we need to be consistent too in what we expect the humans of our programs to be doing as they interact with those horses. All right, so I'm going to take a look here at the comments, see if I missed anything. Let me know if you guys have any questions or comments. But I hope that this chat was either one, helpful for you guys to maybe pinpoint some things that could be causing behaviors that you maybe hadn't thought of before, or maybe find some solutions to those behaviors. And also too, that you're not alone. You're not the only ones experiencing these behaviors. And there is the additional difficulty and layers added on in our programs, where it's not just the trainer and the horse, or the owner and the horse, or the owner and the horse and a couple students. We've got all these other factors too. So be gracious to yourself, but understand that you have other factors that you have to account for when we're trying to decrease equine burnout. And we've got to pivot and adapt if you're going from mainstream equine or one-to-one horse ownership of that person and that horse. The way we handle and manage horses might look differently when we step into the equine assisted services industry, because of all those other layers of the volunteers, the donors, the students, the parents, the wide variety of instructors working with them. So just know that we do have additional layers to take into consideration when we're trying to decrease equine behavior. Remember that you guys are the mouthpieces of your horse. Be advocates for your equine coworkers. Don't be afraid to kindly but firmly stand up for them, because they are the backbone of what we do in our programs, and we cannot do what we do without them. I can't go, I mean, that would be interesting, trying to do adaptive riding and I'm the horse out there. That wouldn't work well. So Margie says, all good comments, would be interested in some ideas about the ways we can freshen them up mentally through interesting exercises. I do a lot of in-hand lateral work with them. So like we'll go out there and we'll do turn on the forehand, turn on the haunches, side pass over. I'll do desensitization with them. I'll take them out and go trail riding. One of my horses, I'm taking her up and I do sorting with her, and just go have fun. So like mentally stimulating activities. I will also take my horse out and just drag them around the barn with me everywhere. Now, again, you have to be careful about when you do this, because who's watching? If a volunteer sees you do this, they might try to replicate it in an unsafe way. But like my horses go and they set up the arena with me, and they're, you know, smelling stuff and touching stuff, and it's an engaging thing for them. So do as much as you can with your horses, and that sometimes helps with monotony. I'm not huge on the whole treat food thing for them. I find that sometimes creates behaviors, and honestly, a lot of times my horses aren't even interested in food, because I do open free choice feeding for them, so they really don't care much about food. And the food that they do care about, they really shouldn't be having, like supplements and grains and stuff that they don't really need. So mentally, exercises, I'm a huge fan of cavaletti work as well. So doing like pulls or different cavalettis and like gymnastics with them on the ground, either lunging or riding. Ground driving and long lining them is fun too. You can teach them to do some pretty cool stuff on the long reins, teaching them how to do Piaffe massage and all of that. Go to a formal clinic to get training on that, but that's a fun way too to just do stuff different, and it builds up their core and it builds up their back. So just interact with those horses. But again, whoever's mentally engaging them and interacting with them, make sure they're essentially training the horse. So make sure they're asking the horse correctly and expecting the horse to do what you want that horse to do in the long run. So Diane says, we now have a consistent training clinics for sidewalkers and horse leaders. Unfortunately, some of our volunteers have been with us and trained prior to these clinics, which causes some of the inconsistency. Yeah. So having those update trainings is super important. So I really like, yearly or even every 6 months doing an update refresher training for horse leaders especially, or like horse prep, like the ones who may not lead in class but might help get the horses ready, or might be part of your exercise crew or whatever it might be. So yeah, doing those consistent trainings, and unfortunately sometimes making them mandatory, is key to getting those people in there, because a lot of times the people who show up to training, if it's not mandatory, are the ones that are already, wanting to learn and engage and doing well. And then the ones that you want at training that need to be there are the ones that, I don't need to attend, I'm good, I know it, I've been here 10 years. We were actually just talking about this on another thread in the volunteer, I think it was the volunteer forum today. So yeah, but good idea, Diane, of doing the consistent training clinics for the sidewalkers and horse leaders. Super key. Use videos too, videos and photos. Record classes and then have a debrief where you guys get together and you guys analyze a class and what those volunteers are doing, horse leaders and sidewalkers, out there in real time. Because a lot of times, if I'm saying, oh, you're leaning on the horse or you're pulling back on your lead rope or you're pulling your lead rope towards you when you're rowing, they're like, no, I'm not. I'm doing what you're telling me, pulling my hand under. And it takes a photo or a video of them to see it. And they're like, oh my gosh, I really thought I was doing it the correct way. I didn't know I was doing that. So use photos and use videos and do it in a open and constructive way where we're not attacking each other. Like, you guys really have to own that and make it a learning environment. But that can also help as well. Elaine Cosby said, what are your recommendations for preventing burnout with a fairly green young horse? Anything specific to a young horse age 6? So, age-wise, under 8 is sometimes a no-go for me. 8 to 10 seems to be where our horses kind of mentally, I guess, settle and mature, depending on the behavior and like that mental make of that horse. Sometimes the younger horse, we're running into them, one, being more mentally active because they're younger, and they just mentally have not matured, or they haven't kind of, reached that steady Eddie pace. Some of those horses, though, even though they're younger, 6, 7, 8, mentally they're a little bit more mature, and so they might settle into what we do more. But a young horse, and financially, I know this is hard sometimes, but only having them do minimal amounts of work with students and volunteers, being very selective with who's working with them so that we're not unintentionally reversing some of that newer training. Because if you think about it, if you start a horse under saddle at 3, 4 maybe, hopefully not much earlier than that, by the time we're asking them to work at 6, how many years of education, of schooling, has that horse had? So with a younger horse, one, have they had enough time to actually solidify their training to be able to be that caretaker and be that more experienced partner when it comes to the horse and volunteer partnership or the horse and student partnership? Because we're asking that horse to kind of be the more experienced one out of that group usually, and they have to rely on that training that's ingrained into them. But it also could be that they're just not mentally settled yet to be in our type of program, or you're going to have to take extra steps. Like, I've got a younger horse in my program right now, but I don't have volunteers here. I function very differently than when I was at a large therapeutic riding center. She's younger, but she's one where the days that she works, I have to either ride her or do a very constructive lunging session with her to mentally get her where she needs to be. Once we're there, she's great. But if I mess up that time that she needs to get mentally prepared to work with a student, then her brain's all over the place. And not unsafely, it's not constructive because she's so scatterbrained and, oh, my people's here and I get to get out and I'm so excited. So with her baby brain, even though she's not a baby, she's 7 now, but she needs that time before her lessons. So I know when I'm scheduling, I have to plan that into my schedule to work her. She's also one where even during my busy season, September through early June, I have to ride her and do groundwork lessons or groundwork schooling stuff with her about twice as much as my more mature horses. And that is not necessarily physically for her, but mentally. And burnout too with young horses, or even older horses that got their training started later in life and maybe they've just had less time. Still, 3 years is 3 years under saddle, or 3 years of solid training is still 3 years if the horse is 13 or if they're 6. Sometimes that burnout happens because we're asking too much of that horse too soon. We're asking them to maintain their training, maintain their boundaries and kind of keep going on the expected behaviors, even when things are a little fuzzy and gray, when a volunteer maybe doesn't ask them correctly, or a student doesn't ask them correctly, or we're not keeping their training up in between sessions. So we could also be asking too much of that horse too soon, and that could be contributing to burnout, and they're getting frustrated and they're getting confused. So with younger horses, I see a lot of the burnout stemming from confusion and boredom. Instead of the older horses, it's usually, that lack of respect, lack of boundaries, overgirthing, monotony. So sometimes different problems. We have a young rescue. So Elaine said, thank you for those ideas. We have a young rescue on trial basis. He's lovely, but really green and young mentally. So, if you guys are willing to take this horse in and invest time into him, and it's just you and quality horse people handling him for the next year to 2 years, awesome. If you guys are not able to invest that time into him, it may not be a good fit for him at this time. And that is okay to say that. I've turned down good horses because they just mentally have not been matured enough, even though physically, they had the training, but there just wasn't enough, it wasn't solidified enough there to have them step into an environment where there's a lot of potentially vague or confusing cues coming from the riders and the volunteers. So I would say the younger horses, depends on the training. Rescue too, if you don't know his background and what he's experienced. Rescues can be hit or miss too, because what's their trigger? What has that horse experienced? Was it just neglect? Was it abuse? Like what's the trigger too? That can be a factor that comes into play. Have you figured out what sets them off? Yes, that's an unknown coming in even from horses that have had owners their whole life and were never rescues. We can still figure out weird quirks that they have. But hopefully a horse that has come from a consistent owner that's had them for several years will be able to tell us that horse's unique quirks or traits up front before we have to figure them out. So again, nothing against rescues, but just a unique, sometimes with the format of what we do and what we're asking of them, sometimes it's just not fair what we're asking them. So sometimes just not a good fit. All right, any other questions or comments? Good questions, guys. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything further up. Jenny said, I agree about overgirthing 100%, and wider at the sternum is best. Yeah, so the girths, have you seen, I would say probably more common in Western girths than English, where the middle part kind of diamonds out and then it can thin out behind where it would go across the elbow. So Jenny was saying to have where it goes over the sternum, over that center part of the horse, have that be wider. It helps distribute the pressure a little bit better than a thinner girth. All right, so I'll hang out here for just a second. I'll wait for you guys to put any final questions or comments in there. Let me know if there's anything I missed on here that you guys want to chat about. But again, check out Hoof Falls and Footfalls. Check out my YouTube channel. There are a lot of free educational videos on YouTube and on Facebook. If you check out my video archives on the Facebook page, make sure you guys don't just like the Facebook page, but follow it. Like or bookmark the podcast if you're listening on there. Same thing with YouTube. Don't just like my page, but also click the little notification bell if you're watching on there. And that, again, just helps the whole, we got to play the stupid analytic technology game. So try and play that game so these videos get out to other instructors. Please feel free to share this video with other instructors. Use it for training if you wish. Just cite where it came from, and I'm good with that. So until next time, I will see you guys on the next live instructor chat. Thank you guys for those that tuned in live, and thank you to everyone who has listened on replay. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.